In 1992, a cargo ship carrying bad toys was stranded in a hurricane. Shipping containers washed overboard, then 28,000 rubber ducks and other toys were swept into North Pacific. However, they didn't stick together. The ducks, on the other hand, have washed up all over the planet, and researchers have used their tracks to gain more knowledge about the movement of ocean water. Hi, my name is Duckling. I am a rubber duck that got lost in the storm that year. Now, I will tell you about my journey along the ocean currents and
Ocean water moves in two directions, horizontally and vertically. Horizontal movements are referred to as currents, while vertical changes are called upwelling or downwelling. Wind, tides, rotation of the earth, and changes in the water density are all factors that influence ocean currents. Surface currents control the motion of the top 10% of the ocean's water, while deep ocean currents mobilize the other 90%. Surface and deep ocean currents affect each other in a complex dance that keeps the whole ocean flowing, despite their diverse courses. Tides and wind, which move water back and forth as the water level falls and rises, generate surface currents near the coast. In the open ocean, however, surface currents are mostly driven by wind. The wind at the ocean surface has effect on water as deep as 400 meters. When you zoom out, you'll notice that they create large loops called gyres, which flow clockwise in the northern hemisphere and counterclockwise in the southern. This is due to how the rotation of the Earth influences the wind patterns that generate these currents. The mirror image happens in the southern hemisphere. The major wind streams form loop-like patterns around the ocean basins. This is called the Coriolis effect, which occurs when the ocean underneath them is pushed into the same spinning gyres by the winds. The currents also have spread heat across the world because water retains heat more effectively than air. Deep ocean currents are primarily driven by changes in the seawater density. Unlike surface currents, the water in the deep ocean becomes colder and saltier. Because this cold, salty water is denser, it sinks, allowing warmer surface water to replace it, forming a vertical current known as thermohaline circulation. Global conveyor belt is loop-in-loop formed by deep water thermohaline circulation and surface currents driven by wind. Vertical directions, which are upwelling and downwelling, also play an essential role in the movement of the ocean currents. Upwelling takes place where surface currents move away from each other, called surface divergence. As the surface waters diverge, deeper water is brought to the surface to replace it, and upwelling zones are formed. The upwelled water is cold and rich in nutrients that nourish the microorganisms which form the base of many oceans' food chains, leading to high productivity. Many of the most productive regions on Earth are found in upwelling zones. Surface convergence is where downwelling occurs. The converging water has nowhere to go but down, so the surface water sinks, and it may deliver oxygen to deeper water. Downwelling is often considered as a low productivity zone since surface water is usually low in nutrients. Upwelling and downwelling also take place along coast, and they are driven by winds, which move water towards or away from the coastline. Surface water moving away from land leads to upwelling, while downwelling occurs when surface water moves toward the land.
Flow of ocean waters has significant impacts on marine organisms, human activities, and climate. Let's talk about how its effects on marine organisms. Ocean currents have a wide range of effects on marine life, not only transporting animals in planes, but also redistributing heat and nutrients. They carry nutrients and food to organisms that live permanently attached in one place and carry reproductive cells and ocean life to new places. For example, salmon, swimming upstream in a form of migrations as well as the means of ensuring that the young can survive long enough to hatch and grow into adults. When the young mature, they drift along the current to the open ocean to get food to live. Ocean currents can destroy the marine wildlife. El Niño is a weather phenomenon in Pacific Oceans. El Niño makes the surface water temperature warms up, leading to complex weather patterns all around the world. Warm water pushes cold water downward, blocking the important upwelling of nutrient-rich water from the bottoms. This causes marine life to migrate to the colder water. Next, animals that normally feed on the sea life suffers.
Ocean currents have affected human life in both positive and negative. In positive way, ocean currents regulate climate and prevent it from becoming overly extreme. People have used ocean currents to explore the earth. In addition, ocean currents affect the shipping industry, commercial, and recreational fishing. Ocean currents play a role in the distribution of pollution, such as oil spills. Oil and fuel tend to remain on the surface of the ocean, so knowing the current helps determine where such pollution might travel. Safety operations, such as rescues, use currents to help look for missing people or other objects in the sea. In negative way, a typical effect is coastal erosion. Coastal erosion is the process by which local sea level rise, strong wave action, and coastal flooding weigh down or carry away rocks, soils, and sands along the coast. The long-term loss of sediments of coastal zones results in the destruction process of coastline retreat and beach erosion. In addition, its damage to structures and loss of land. Sea level rise will cause an increase in coastal erosion. The extent and severity of the problem is worsening with global sea level rise, but it differs in different parts of the country. So there is no one-size-fits-all solution. The last negative effect is rift current. A rift current is a strong flow of water running from a beach back to the open ocean, sea, or lake. Rift currents can sweep even the strongest swimmer away from shore. Rift currents are one of the most dangerous natural hazards in the world. The strength of rift currents can be seasonal. During hurricane season, from June to November, there is a greater chance for rift currents to develop. Rift currents can be found in almost beaches. Here are some tips to enter the water safely. The United States Life Saving Association (USLA) recommends that swimmers who find themselves in a rift current do not try to swim back to shore. The USLA advises swimmers caught in a rift current to swim parallel to shore. Rift currents are usually narrow enough to be escapable this way.
Now move to the effect to the limage. How do ocean currents affect limage? The ocean is a major component in the limage system. With the huge heat capacity received from the sun, it plays a dynamic role. Ocean currents move vast amounts of heat across the planet, and it is constantly evaporating, increasing the temperatures and humidities of the surrounding air to form rain and storm that are then carried by winds. In fact, almost rain that falls on land starts in the oceans. As we all know, the thermohaline circulations of deep water and wind-driven surface current combine to form the conveyor belt. Two processes occur in the conveyor belt are warm surface currents transport from the equator to the poles, and cold deep ocean currents move away from the poles to the equator. The warm heat warm the coast of Europe and North America. Thus, ocean currents regulate global climate, helping to counteract the unequal distributions of solar radiation reaching Earth's surface. Without currents in the oceans, regional temperatures would be super hot at the equator and frigid toward the poles, and less of the Earth's land would be habitable. The warm and cold currents affect the limit of the coastal, however, only when wind blows in from the sea. Cold currents can lower air temperatures and can bring colder temperatures over land. For example, the coast of California. Because the currents that runs along the California coastline runs from north to south, it carries cool water. The cool atmosphere at the oceans combine with the wind of the wind belt to blow to the land. Thus, the temperatures of the California coastal city is relatively cool. On the other hand, warm currents hit the air over the oceans and bring higher temperatures over land. This is the case for the eastern side of USA. On the eastern side of the US, the Gulf Stream brings warm water from equatorial regions to the pole. Thus, the US southeastern coastal cities, like Florida, generally have warmer climate than western coastal cities at the same latitude. Going on with the Gulf Stream, scientists predict with the global warming at current base, the Gulf Stream will continue to weaken. Its collapse will have direct consequences for our weather and life on Earth. However, it is still uncertain. There has been little effect on the limit because of the weaker Gulf Stream. An increase in storm and rainfall have happened around the North America and west coast of Europe. The effect not just stop in regional but in globally. The decline of the ices would also be put into fast forward. Heat wave also increase, making temperatures hotter. After all, the climate change will faster the Gulf Stream weaken. Climate change is currently in an alarming state, not only adversely affecting human and animal life, but also negatively affecting the movement of ocean water. Climate change is weakening the ocean currents that shape weather on both sides of the Atlantic. The Atlantic meridional overturning circulations, which is the currents, play a key role in shaping the limit of eastern North America and western Europe. But in the 20th century, the circulations had weakened more than at any other time during at least the last 1,000 years. Some studies showing that global warming is driving the weakening. The new findings suggest that the circulation will lose even more strength in the decades ahead. That could cause heat and cold extreme in Europe and rapid sea level rise along the east coast of the US. As it weakens, pools of warm water form that can lead to ocean heat waves, with increasing evidence that overheating oceans are linked with drought on nearby land areas. Stephen Ramstock, a climate scientist with the Potsdam Institute for Climate Impact Research, predicts that the current system will weaken further by 24 to 45% by the year 2100 because of the global warming. Many climate model simulations going back decades predict exactly that the cause of the weaken is human-caused climate change.
The movements of sea water have many further developments being potential to serve for the human demands as well as studying ocean currents. Now we're gonna talk about their application. First, tidal energy. Tidal energy is created using the movement of our tides and oceans, where the intensity of the water from the rise and fall of tides is form of a kinetic energy. Tidal plants can only be installed along coastlines. In Vietnam, coastline often experience one low tide and one high tide. The difference in water levels must be at least 5 meters high to produce electricity. And tidal electricity can be created from several technologies, the main ones being tidal fences, tidal turbines, and tidal barrages. Tidal barrages are the most efficient ones. Ocean water is 832 times more dense than air, and therefore ocean current generates relatively more energy than air currents. Tidal power is easy to install and renewable, having a low environmental impact because the ocean have been no direct greenhouse gas emissions. Because the ocean tidal patterns are well understood, tidal energy is very predictable energy source, making it highly attractive for electrical grid management. And now we will move to the next part is Argo floats. Argo float scientists can sample the ocean only briefly, so they deploy automatic devices for long-term ocean monitoring called Argo float. Argo float collects information from inside the ocean using a fleet of robotic instruments that drift with the ocean current. It moves up and down between the surface and mild water level. The main reason for collecting these data is to help us understand the ocean role in Earth's climate and so be able to make improved estimates of how it will change in the future. The float sinks by decreasing its volume in the water and using stabilized at 1 kilometer. 10 days later, the float first descends to 2 kilometers and then return to the surface, measure ocean properties as it rises. And the float can be programmed to stay at one depth or to move up and down to follow changing conditions. It records the ocean pressure, temperature, and salinity. Finish one cycle, the float makes radio contact its new location, reviews the features of the underwater currents in the data supply, and then starts new cycle. Data for immediate use in research and operational forecasting of marine and climate conditions worldwide. Now, there are more than 3,000 floats in the global network.
The flows of ocean water are amazing, and they still have untapping potential. I drifted for a while and then fell asleep. When I woke up, I found myself washed up on an island with lots of garbage gathered here. Why I am here? Why is there so much trash here? Mr. Curran said sadly, I brought you here. I am the great ocean current of the sea. I used to be very fresh, rich in vitality, be the soul of life rhythm here. But now I have become weak, old, and dirty. In the past, I always brought life energy to this island. Now, only dirty garbage piled up on this place. I sympathize with him very much. You see, Mr. Curran was very kind and generous. He was very miserable because of the harm humans did to him. I think you have realized the beauty and the potential of the ocean currents. So let's protect them, which also means we are protecting our lives.